Welcome to Another Thing. I'm Larry Menti, and welcome to Tax Weekend. If you're stressed out by that information, it probably means you haven't filed yet. Your deadline for filing this year is Tuesday. We'll explain about that in a second. But this weekend is a reminder that President Trump is planning to take on tax reform for both personal and corporate taxes. How might that change your tax profile? And are there really going to be fewer audits this year? We'll answer those and other questions in this show, and we start with Ellen Kolodziej. Ellen.
Thank you, Larry. Every year when tax season rolls around, a lot of people roll their eyes about how much money they owe. And that's why President Trump made a key part of his campaign cutting taxes for businesses and individuals. And while millions of people are hopeful, there's still a lot of healthy skepticism.
You know, a lot of times when they talk and they propose things, a lot of times they don't happen.
Joe Stringer has owned Akabuchi Formal Wear for 10 years. He and co-owner Steve Castle each have 5 kids, and any kind of tax relief would be a welcome change.
You know, being in business, it's very difficult to, with all the taxes and all, you get hit, and it's difficult to survive. And there's a lot of companies that actually have gone under throughout the years. But hopefully everybody can work together and get something accomplished when it comes to the tax cuts.
Castle would of course like to see his personal taxes and especially his business taxes go down. And that's what President Trump has talked about for months.
No business of any size, from a Fortune 500 company to a mom and pop shop to a freelancer living from gig to gig, will pay more than 15% of their business income in taxes.
And that has always been one of his main goals, to cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 15%, a huge difference that some worry could cause the deficit to explode. Other ideas include cutting the payroll tax and going from 7 tax brackets down to 3 for personal income, all in an effort to simplify things and help workers keep more of what they earn. For example, a person making $60,000 could see a savings of $3,720 a year. These possible reductions sound pretty sweet to small business owners like Castle and Stringer, both of whom aren't sure the tax reform will happen this year, but believe they might in the near future.
With the tax cuts, it would definitely help bring home more money and keep money in our pocket, as opposed to, week to week, month to month, and living that way, which a lot of people do, whether you're in business for yourself or not.
Hopefully, down the line, if they continue to do it and President Trump, continues to try to get this done, and the Democrats and Republicans work together, hopefully in the next, maybe 2-3 years, I feel a little confident that, they could get it done.
So this time next year, when the tax man cometh, maybe we will all see a little bit of relief. But President Trump has not unveiled any specifics of his plan so far, and some reports say he's still tinkering with the whole proposal. Reporting for Another Thing, I'm Ellen Kolodziej.
All right, thank you, Ellen. Now with us to talk more about taxes this year and beyond, certified public accountant Neil Becourtney with CohnReznick, an accounting tax advisory firm. Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming in today.
You're welcome.
Busy time for you.
Oh, yes.
So the deadline is approaching. It's a strange deadline this year.
Right. April 15th falls out on Saturday. So normally the deadline would get pushed to the next business day, which is Monday the 17th. However, Monday the 17th is Emancipation Day, a holiday celebrated in the District of Columbia. And a provision in the Internal Revenue Code states that when the national office of the IRS is closed, which will happen on Monday the 17th due to this holiday in D.C., no tax filings can take place on that day. So all tax filings normally due April 15th, 2017 are pushed to Tuesday, April 18th.
And procrastinators rejoice. So you have a lot of people now that are doing last-minute taxes. What advice do you have for them?
Well, one area of confusion that people encounter has to do with extensions. They think that they can just file an extension request and get a 6-month extension to October 15th. But it's an extension of time to file, not an extension of time to pay. And if you don't pay a specified amount of your tax, which is 90% federal or 80% New Jersey, then you will face penalties for not having paid a proper amount of tax for extension purposes. So you have to actually go through a tax calculation and not just file a piece of paper to get a proper extension.
So if you're going to get a refund, it doesn't matter?
If you're overpaid, right, it doesn't matter. It only really matters if you're facing a balance due.
Now, I heard a story that because of the federal freeze on hiring implemented by Donald Trump, there'll be fewer audits this year. Is that true?
Well, yes, although I'll expand on that. We've seen a trend in recent years of less and less IRS audits because Congress has continuously slashed the IRS budget, and the IRS has had many other duties on its plate besides tax compliance. One in particular is the growing problem of identity theft.
So the answer to the question is yes. You have a less of a chance, maybe than ever before, of being audited, at least in modern history.
Correct.
Yeah, I know you don't want to tell people to cheat, but
of course not.
Yeah, but
we've seen statistically that there are less and less audits. This has been publicized in print, and we're also seeing it in our offices.
But now let's get to the other duties of the IRS, because they're finding themselves more and more having to deal with identity fraud.
Yes. So we electronically file virtually all our clients' tax returns. We're mandated to. So once the client signs off authorization forms, we push the button and transmit the tax returns. And not a large percentage, but enough that it's a headache, we get rejections, and the rejection will state that the IRS has already received an electronically filed tax return using that taxpayer or spouse's Social Security number.
And people do that because they know there's a refund coming?
Well, once the thieves get your name, address, and Social Security number, they just make up numbers and seek refunds. And the IRS has put in filters, and in some cases, they will block erroneous refunds, but in many cases, they've admitted that billions of dollars of improper refunds are issued every year.
Oh, I get it. So it doesn't really matter if you're due a refund or not. They'll just make up the numbers to make sure they get a refund, and you can face the charges of tax fraud, and they get the money.
This year, they made all W-2 filings, whether paper or electronic, had to be done by January 31. The thought being, if the IRS has the W-2s before the 1040s start to get processed, they'll be in a much better position to ward off erroneous refunds from being issued.
And that's fascinating. I know that if you have a complicated tax return, you seek out someone like you, but there are many people that do their own and do it through Quicken or TurboTax.
Sure. If
they get the notification that somebody's already filed taxes, what do they do?
Well, the first thing I would recommend is go on the IRS website, www.irs.gov. There's a form 14039, identity theft affidavit, that I would strongly recommend is filed, where you announce to the IRS that you're a victim. And now you have to revert to a paper tax return.
And then once they know that you've been a victim, they'll start investigating your case, and you get an extension?
Well, you still file your tax return. You've already completed the tax return, presumably, that you e-filed. Now you're just reverting to a different mode, the old way of paper filing, but it, on average, takes 9 months for you to get your refund when you're a victim of identity theft. Millions of taxpayers across the country are affected by this.
I want to move on now to the current tax climate and the fact that Donald Trump is talking about restructuring the tax code for individuals and for companies. Right now, there's a lot of brackets. They're going to take it down to 3?
Trump's proposal is to shrink 7 brackets to 3 with the top rate 33%, which obviously would be a windfall for the higher income taxpayers who are paying at a top rate of 39.6. There's also a 35% rate before you get to 39.6. The one tax that really hits your middle-class taxpayers, and there's no talk of that changing, is the Social Security tax and Medicare tax, which are commonly referred to as FICA taxes, which is 7.65% that's withheld from all employees' wages, and the employer matches it dollar for dollar.
You'd like to see brackets on that tax so that somebody that makes less doesn't have to pay as higher percentage?
I'm just saying that all the tax cuts that...
You're not taking a position.
No, that the tax cuts that are being talked about have to do with income tax rates, but that doesn't address, for the lower income taxpayers, the middle class, the hit that they take, especially if you have a 2-worker household, both spouses are paying that same FICA tax.
So if you really wanted to help the middle class, that's where you would look.
That's one area. I don't think the plan that's being proposed, which of course is subject to Congress's actions, is going to provide any significant tax reduction to the middle class. I think it's more slanted to the higher income taxpayers. But the thought is the higher income taxpayers pay more tax, and if their tax is reduced, they'll have more to invest and grow the economy. I believe that's
the thought process. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being in. Certified Public Accountant Neil Becourtney with CohnReznick, an accounting tax advisory firm. Still to come on Another Thing, where to go in New Jersey if you or someone you love is a compulsive gambler. That's next.